three. Hola, hola, welcome to Al Grano con Nora, real talk on power and possibility without the fluff. My name is Nora Vargas, and for more than 30 years, I've been on the front lines navigating crisis, building bridges, and creating opportunities, and sometimes trying to figure out things one day at a time. I've been an executive assistant, a community organizer, a CEO, public servant, board member, a leadership coach, and supervisors and at the community colleges, but none of those titles or accomplishments uh, really are what make me who I am. This is just me and trying to make sure that we have a conversation that feels a little bit more personal. And today I wanted to talk about something different on El Grano. I wanted to talk about America's 250-year birthday. Think about that, 250 years of dreams, contradictions, innovation, of mistakes, of progress, of setbacks, of people trying to create something better than what existed before. And if I'm honest, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what that anniversary means, not as a politician and not as a former elected official, not even as a policy wonk, but what it means to me as a daughter, as a fronteriza, first generation college graduate, and someone whose life has been shaped by both sides of the border. As someone who has spent decades working in communities and trying to create opportunities for others, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. This isn't really a story about America. It's a story about possibility. It's a story about people. It's a story about whether we still believe that tomorrow can be better than today. And despite everything that is happening and everything that I've seen, I do believe. I still believe, despite it all. Now, before anybody gets nervous and thinks this is going to be a political episode, relax, chill. That's not what we're doing today. Because whether you're conservative, progressive, independent, or somewhere in between, this conversation is bigger than politics. It's about leadership, it's about community, it's about responsibility. And really, it's about what happens when ordinary people decide to care. And I think that's something all of us can relate to. I often say that I grew up on one foot on the Mexican side and one foot on the US side. And that's true. Growing up in Tijuana, American wasn't something I just watched on television. It wasn't a chapter in a history book. It wasn't an abstract concept. It was right there, across the border, every day. I crossed back and forth so often that I learned something before I even learned had a language for it. I learned how to live between two worlds. I learned how to adapt, how to translate not just language, culture, expectations, norms, identity. And I learned how to walk into spaces where I wasn't always expected to be. I learned how to find my place anyway. And now, at the time, I didn't realize those experiences were preparing me for leadership. I just thought I was just surviving. And honestly, most of us don't realize we're developing leadership skills while we're living through difficult experiences. We only understand it later, years later, when we look back and connect the dots. And when I look back now, I realize crossing the border taught me one of the most important lessons of my life, that two things can be true at the same time. You can love something and still want it to improve. You can still be grateful and still advocate for change. You can recognize flaws and still believe in possibility. And those ideas are not in conflict. They're actually connected. Because if you care deeply about something, you want it to be better. And that's how I feel about America. I've seen the best of this country and I've seen the challenges. I've seen extraordinary opportunities and I've seen heartbreaking inequities. I've seen systems create opportunity and I've seen systems fail people. And both are true. And maybe that's why sometimes simplistic answers have never worked for me. Life isn't simple, communities aren't simple, and leadership definitely isn't simple. But neither is democracy. I remember becoming the first person in my family to graduate from college. That moment wasn't just about me. It was about some like individual story. It would belong to everybody: my parents, my teachers, my mentors, friends who encouraged me, people who saw something in me before I saw it in myself. And that sometimes I've come to appreciate more as I've gotten older. We love stories about self-made people, but the truth is that very few people get anywhere completely on their own. Every opportunity I've had because somebody opened a door for me and someone made an introduction, someone offered encouragement, someone believed in me. And that's why I get emotional when people talk about the American dream as though it's purely individual, because every success story is actually a community story. Every single one. There's always somebody behind the scene helping, supporting, teaching, investing, believing, and that's a beautiful thing because it reminds us that we belong to one another. So years later, when I became a community organizer, I saw that lesson again. I worked with families trying to improve their neighborhoods, parents advocating for their children, residents fighting for cleaner parks, safe spaces for street, better schools. And what struck me the most wasn't how much power they had, it was how much determination they had. Most didn't have titles, most didn't have money, most weren't famous, but they cared, and caring was powerful. Sometimes we underestimate the power of people who care, people who show up, people who volunteer, people who organize, people who help, people who refuse to give up on their community. And that's where the real change often begins, not in the headlines, not in the speeches, but in the relationships and trust and community. And honestly, that's still why I believe today, even after all these years, even after serving as a CEO or elected official, even after leading during some of the most difficult times that our communities and our region have faced, what changes communities isn't power alone. Really, it's people. And that's why I still believe in our America, because I believe in people. And when it came to public service and the 12 years that I was there, navigating crisis, making difficult decisions, carrying responsibility, there's a big difference when you think about the fact that it's people, right? People are the ones that you're trying to work with, that you want to make sure that you understand that there are limited resources, complex realities, and that you're trying to do the best you can. And sometimes it's not easy, but there were days when I come home carrying the weight of the entire community, days where there were no perfect answers, days where option had consequences, and days when I questioned myself. And I think about it often and think about what it reminds me as I think about the leadership is a responsibility that can be heavy, but it's also meaningful because it reminds us that our actions matter, that our choices matter, that how we show up for others. And maybe I think that's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned over the years, that leadership isn't about being important. It's not being about useful or it's about asking, how can I help? How can I contribute? How can I leave this a little better than I found it? And if enough people ask those questions, extraordinary things begin to happen. So if I'm being completely honest, there were moments when my faith in the process was tested, moments when I wondered if we were moving fast enough, moments where the criticism felt louder than the progress, moments when I felt like no matter what decision was made, someone was going to be disappointed. But that's another thing people don't tell you about leadership. You rarely get to see the full impact of your work while you're doing it. Most of the days, you're planting seeds and hoping that someone else gets to enjoy the shade. I remember one particular moment during my time in public service when we were navigating multiple crises at the time, public health challenges, economic uncertainty, environmental issues, communities demanding answers. People were scared, frustrated, and tired. I remember sitting in a meeting late one evening thinking, how do we hold all of this together? How do we continue moving forward when people are hurting? And the answer wasn't some brilliant policy idea. It wasn't a strategic plan. It wasn't perfectly crafted speeches. The answer was people. It was public health workers showing up every day. It was nonprofit leaders serving families. It was community organizations distributing food. It was volunteers helping neighbors. It was teachers adapting. It was small businesses offering, owners really refusing to quit. And it was again and again, the answer was people. And that's why I still believe in the possibility of America. Not because institutions are perfect, not because leaders are perfect, not because systems are perfect. They're not. I believe because people continue to show up despite the setbacks, despite the disappointments, and despite uncertainty. People keep showing up. And honestly, that gives me hope because hope isn't optimism. Hope isn't pretending everything is okay. Hope is really choosing to continue believing that our actions really matter. Hope is deciding to participate. Hope is refusing to become cynical. And after 30 years of community work, that's the one lesson I know to be true. Cynicism has never built anything. Hope has. Communities have, relationships have, people have. And maybe that's what this anniversary means to me. Not celebrating perfection, celebrating possibilities, celebrating resilience, celebrating the ongoing work of building something better. Because America, like all of us, is still becoming, still evolving, still learning, still growing, still unfinished. And honestly, I think there's something beautiful about that because unfinished means possibility, that the possibility still exists. Unfinished means that there's still work worth doing, and unfinished means the story is still being written. And every single one of us gets to decide what part we're going to play. Now, that brings me to something that has been on my mind lately, because you were talking about America turning 250 years old. We also have to talk about how we talk about America. And that's where things get interesting, which means it's time for No Manches. Can we talk for a minute? Because no manches, if you spend enough time online these days, you think the world is ending every 15 minutes. Every day I wake up with headlines, breaking news. Every issue is the end of civilization. Every disagreement is a crisis. Every comment section is a battlefield. And honestly, it's exhausting. Really, truly, no manches. Some days I open social media and within 5 minutes, I need a cafecito, a walk around the block, some namaste time, because apparently everybody's angry, everybody's outraged, everybody's certain that they're right, and nobody wants to listen. And don't get me wrong, there are real changes that need to happen, real concerns, real issues that deserve attention. But here's what I've noticed. The loudest voices aren't always the most representative voices, because when I leave the internet and spend time with actual human beings, I see something very different. I see teachers spending their own money on classroom supplies. I see parents working 2 jobs because they want their children to have opportunities they never had. I see entrepreneurs risking everything to build a business. I see volunteers serving meals, neighbors helping neighbors, people mentoring young leaders, grandparents raising grandchildren. I see community members cleaning parks, people donating blood. I see ordinary people doing extraordinary things every single day. And nobody's making TikToks about that. Nobody's screaming about it online. Nobody's getting millions of views. Or just doing the work quietly, consistently, with love and honesty. And that's the America we know. The America I know isn't found on comment sections. It's found in community centers, church halls, school auditoriums, neighborhood meetings, volunteer events, little league games, food drives, family gatherings. The America I know is built by people who care. And I think sometimes we forget that. We spend so much time talking about what's broken that we forget to notice what's actually working. We spend so much time focusing on division that we overlook connection. We spend so much time consuming outreach that we stop seeing humanity. And so I say, no manches. We can't stop acting like leadership only belongs to people with titles, because that's one of the biggest myths out there. Some of the most impactful leaders I've ever met did not hold public office. They never ran a company. They never sat in a boardroom. They were moms, they were teachers, coaches, mentors, neighbors, tias, community advocates, people who simply decide to care, people who made someone else's life a little better. And to me, that's leadership, that's influence, that's impact. And honestly, those people deserve a lot more credit, because while everyone is arguing online, they're actually doing something. That's the leadership we need. And that's definitely worth celebrating, especially on America's 250th birthday, because if America is a story, those people are writing some of those best chapters every single day. So here's the grano de oro I want to leave you with today. When I think about America turning 250 years old, I don't think about a number. I think about responsibility. I think about stewardship. I think about what we inherit and what we leave behind. Because every generation receives something unfinished. Every generation inherits opportunities and challenges, dreams and disappointments, progress and problems. And then we make a choice. Do we simply consume what was built for us, or do we contribute something meaningful for those who come after us? And that's the question. And honestly, I think that's what really leadership is really all about. No titles, no status, no recognition, stewardship, taking care of something bigger than ourselves, leaving it a little better than we found it. And sometimes that's with our families, our businesses, our communities, a movement. But all of us are shaping something, whether we realize it or not. And when I reflect on my journey, that's what I keep coming back to. I think about all the parents, the sacrifices, the teachers who believed in me, the mentors who opened doors, the opportunities that changed my life, the communities that trusted me, the people who invested in me. And I realize now, none of this happened alone. Every chapter in my life, like in anybody's life, is made possible because someone chose to invest in that future. Someone chose to believe in the possibility, and someone chose to care. And now it's our turn to mentor, to serve, to build, to invest, and to create opportunities for others, because the American dream isn't something we inherit. It's something we continue to build. Generation after generation, family after family, community after community, leader after leader. There will be disappointments, and there will be moments when progress feels painfully slow. There will be moments when we question whether we're moving in the right direction. That's part of everything worthwhile in a journey. The question isn't whether things will be difficult. The question is whether we keep showing up, whether we keep contributing, I still believe in the possibility. I still believe that we can do this. And I still believe that there are opportunities for us to move forward because in the end, I believe in the American dream despite it all. I hope that today you take some time to really not only share with others and remember that we are still contributing to a story that's bigger than ourselves, a story that's still worth writing. So, America, happy 250th birthday. I still believe in you. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and keep showing up.